Sex in the pews. Sex in the pews. Sex in the pews.
Sex in the pews.
It's a beautiful day in Tampa Bay for Hump Day, Wednesday, January 30th, 2019. The only 1/30/2019 in the history of humanity. Let us continue to choose on purpose.
With a purpose.
To give
A great day.
a great hump.
Great hump.
Greetings, you beautiful humans. This is Glenn Klein.
And Owen Pratt.
Welcome in the pews on this particular Wednesday. Happy to have you along for the ride. The big question and the thing that people around the planet want to know, has Owen Pratt recovered from Gasparilla yet?
There's still some lingering Gaspar
Illa
effects.
First Gasparilla Festival this past weekend. In 72 hours, you know, they say after a workout, the 72nd hour is the toughest. So
You proposing that after a gallivanting weekend, it's the 72nd hour?
same thing, same concept.
Okay, I'm with it.
You're a fitness enthusiast. You should know this.
It's true. Just testing you.
You think tomorrow you might be back to your normal energetic self?
Yes.
There's a good yes or no question to a yes or no answer, ladies and gentlemen. Or, a yes or no answer to a yes or no question. It's fun, organized fun with a purpose, sex in the pews. We deal with some really serious shit on this program. But if you don't have fun with it, then what the hell's the purpose?
It's life, right?
As we've talked many times on past programs, one of the most influential books that we could ever recommend is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, who was a Auschwitz survivor and wrote this amazing book. And it's not a big book. It's a thin pocket book that goes into great detail about his life in the concentration camp. And he comes up with this concept called mental hygiene. At the time, he was a disciple of Sigmund Freud's. And the concept initially, as the discipline of psychiatric and psychoanalysis developed, was that in order to be mentally healthy, you had to rid your entire life of conflict. And then Frankl found himself in the ultimate conflict, World War II, in a concentration camp. And he saw people surviving and being mentally healthy. If your number wasn't up and you decided not to commit suicide, he said that all the people there had the same thing in common. If you wanted to commit suicide, if you were done, you just didn't get out of your bed in the morning. And the guards came in and they shot you. But if you did get out of bed and they didn't stick you in line for the gas chamber, then he said that every single person had the same thing in common, which was they were living for something bigger than themselves. And that is what he developed as a concept of mental hygiene. Paul called it the renewing of the mind or the salvation of the soul. And cannot recommend it enough. Have something bigger that you're living for than yourself. But one thing that Frankl noticed, and you never see this in any of the documentaries and the films and the reporting on the Holocaust, is that there was humor in the concentration camps. That's one of the ways that they got through the worst thing that humanity has ever presented to other human beings. Now, have there been things that have been just as bad as the Holocaust? Yes. But it can't get any worse than that. Humor is huge in getting over this challenge called life. So it is organized fun with a purpose. The purpose is to move things forward in our own individual lives and on the planet. And one of the things we've noticed and why we do the show that we do is that human sexuality, very important to a positive, fulfilling, healthy outlook in life, and the number one historic institution and organization that has come against the possibility of humans experiencing positive, healthy sexuality has been religion. Yeah. That's not funny.
Not funny.
There's some funny shit that's happened in it. Like I remember when I was steeped in fundamentalism, and I was a huge supporter of Jimmy Swaggart. And of course, Swaggart used to always come against sexual immorality, as he called it. And then in the late 1980s, he got caught with hookers in Louisiana. And he comes on national TV and the tears are pouring out of his eyes. And he goes, I have sinned. Saturday Night Live did an amazing. I don't know if it was Dan Aykroyd. I can't remember who. It wasn't Dan Aykroyd. He was way gone by then. But whoever performed Jimmy Swaggart, they had, however they fixed it, they had like tears, like rain pouring out of his eyes. It was very, very funny. I wonder if our special guest remembers that moment, if he's old enough. He is David Smalley, a stand-up comedian and actor in Los Angeles, California, who has hosted the widely popular Dogma Debate podcast for more than 7 years, which is very much in line with what we're doing in a certain way. He's a former Christian turned atheist who now debates preachers and religious believers in a respectful way on his show called Dogma Debate. Please welcome in the pews, Mr. David Smalley. David.
Yeah, isn't Gasparilla that anal sex pirate festival?
The answer to your yes or no question is yes, it is, David.
I thought so, and that would mean you would need to recover from that. Hi, guys. How are you?
I made sure to stretch before and after, all right? It prevents injury.
Squats. You gotta do squats, buddy.
Squats before and squats during.
And after.
So, David, you'll be interested to know that both Owen and myself were former Christians. I used to call myself a Messianic Jew because I'm Jewish.
Okay.
But, you know, I was just dyed-in-the-wool fundamentalist. Like I said, Jimmy, do you remember that skit, that Saturday night? Are you old enough to remember that?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. How old are you?
I'll be 40 on my next birthday, and I'm 39. I don't want to use the word 40. That's an F word now. I'm avoiding it. 39. I'll be 39 for the next few years.
Well, 40 is a new 29-ish.
Okay.
So I was a serious believer and really totally dedicated my life to it after I had a spiritual experience when I was 25 with Christ. And now, while both Owen and I, through a recovery program for Christians, that's how we met Kathy Taylor, and that's how we met you, because Kathy's been a guest on Dogma Debate on your show. And we are not believers anymore, and we are not Christians, but we are knowers. We know that there's a creator. It makes sense to us. It's logical. Where there's a creation, there is a creator. And be happy to talk more about it. We talk a lot about it on the show. But, and the people, the beautiful humans that are listening around the planet right now, if they've been paying attention, they know our stories and our position. But how did you go from being a Christian to an atheist?
Well, I want to say something real quick about your knowing comment. We definitely need to have you on my show where we can break that down and talk about it.
Right on.
Because I would push back and say you are a believer, not a knower. Because you're asserting to have knowledge that you can't demonstrate, which is either faith or a belief. Once you can demonstrate it, it becomes fact, then it's knowledge, right? So I don't think you can state that you know something without being able to prove it.
You want to play right now?
We could, but that's more for my show, right? I mean, I just saying we're knowers, we know. I mean, I don't know. There are some things I realize that I would say I know that I can't prove. Like if I know I had a dream last night, there's certain things. But getting into the metaphysical realm that a God or a creator. Wait, let me clarify. Do you do you know who the creator is, or that there just is one out there somewhere? Like, is it a deistic sort of presentation, or do you believe in a personal God that you know that is not the same God depicted in the Bible?
May I ask you a question first? Is that all right?
Sure. I mean, well, I don't know. Sure.
We just need to, kind of clarify and level our definitions here. So I appreciate you saying that you had a dream, but you can't prove it. Because everybody that's listening can understand that, especially when you wake up in the middle of a dream. That's kind of how you know it, or you remember it later. So right now, you're speaking to us on Skype on your telephone from beautiful Los Angeles, California, right?
Right.
Do you know, just yes or no questions here with yes or no answers. Do you know if somebody was involved in the manufacture of your device?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yes. Do you know who they are? Do you know who they are?
This is blind watchmaker stuff, man. This Dawkins handled this shit.
Do you know who they are? No, you're not playing. You're not playing. Did you know who that? Do you know who they are?
No.
Do you know where they came from? No.
No.
Do you know their name?
No. Why does it matter?
Yeah, but see, again, somebody was involved in the creation of your device because it's logical.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
It makes sense. And even though you don't know everything about them, or maybe even anything about them, except that they existed because that exists, because it has form and substance and utility, it works. And if there's anything that works, is the universe and the galaxies and the planet rotating around the sun.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. No. 99% of all living creatures on planet Earth are now extinct. Our universe is constantly trying to murder us in our sleep. This thing is chaotic. There are volcanoes. 73% of the Earth is uninhabitable by humans. This is not by any stretch of the imagination something that was designed for humans to be able to live. The vast majority of our own solar system is not inhabitable by us. I mean, this is absolutely not. I would not say it works. In fact, it's headed towards self-destruction. It is actively working toward expanding beyond its own capabilities and exploding within itself. No, I will not just go, it works. Dude, a laptop works, and sometimes it fails and we go get it repaired.
Yes.
But there are so many ridiculous diseases and mutations and malformations and birth defects that nobody could explain if there was a creator in charge of all this. However, if it had come about natural processes and evolution didn't give a damn about any of us, and it was all just about adaptation and a form of abiogenesis we haven't quite understood yet, we would expect it to look chaotic and murderous, and that's exactly what we see.
I don't think that a creator is in charge at all. I think there was a creator at the beginning. I think the creator set things into motion. I think that he gave us a clue as to what he might or she might be up to. And I think that it is recorded in not the Bible, but in the ancient Jewish text that we call the Torah or the Tanakh. And that it makes sense to, just because there's hassles and because the phone or your laptop, and you're very familiar with laptops not working most recently, and just because it doesn't work temporarily doesn't mean it wasn't designed to work. And just because there were challenges doesn't mean that you can't fix it. You fixed it, or maybe Best Buy fixed it, or maybe it didn't get fixed at all. But this is not Dogma Debate. It sounds like Dogma Debate,
this is why I asked at the very beginning, is it a deistic presentation? And that's exactly what it is. You're saying that there was a first cause, a first mover, and so we'll get into that on my show. What was the original question you asked me?
I look forward to that eventuality. What was your process of going from a Christian to an atheist?
Your deconversion process.
Reading the Bible, man. I read the Bible and took notes for the things that didn't jive with reality.
What version?
I actually started with a Catholic Bible, including the Apocrypha. Okay. So I went pretty original. And then I would shift, because I would meet up with people throughout the process, and I would go, I'm really confused about Jesus. Is he the Son of God or the same person as God? And my Jehovah's Witness friend would pull me aside and show me the New English translation and go, clearly Jesus is the Son of God and they're two separate people. I'd go, okay. And then I'd go to the Baptist church at the corner of my block, and the preacher would pull me into his office, and I'd be like, yeah, it doesn't really make sense, but I do know that Jesus is the Son of God and it's a different entity. And he would go, I'm sorry, who lied to you? Was it Satan himself? Let me show you something. And he would flip to different versions in the New King James Version and go, actually, Jesus and God are one. And it's like, it's like an egg. You crack it open. There are three different parts. It's the Trinity. And he goes, how you can be, you are an uncle, you are a brother, and you are a son, but you're just David. And I go, oh, okay. And I left there, and about 30 seconds after walking out, I was like, yeah, but I couldn't be my own uncle and my own son at the same time. This doesn't make any damn sense. And so once I would dive into it and think a little bit more, I would just go home, and I kept this notepad where I wrote everything down. And I had interviews with theology professors, preachers, pastors, priests, lay Christians, atheists. And I sort of took it all in and went on this 14-year journey. And in 2010, I released a book called Baptized Atheist. And then in 2012, I did an audio version of that where I did some updates and sort of corrected some things that I got wrong in the book, and sort of had changed my views on a few things and updated it. And that was kind of the process. I mean, I could go into it deeper, but, blogging about it, having Christians come and respond to the blog, keeping it as a respectful conversation, them giving me things to research, me giving them things to research, and not really having some solid questions answered, really just led me to go, you know what? The way I see it right now, you could classify me as an agnostic atheist, meaning agnostic admitting that one doesn't have knowledge. Okay, that's clear. We're all there. And then when it comes to belief, do I have a theism that I propose, a theism or deism that I latch onto, or am I without that theism? And without a theism means a theist. And so that's where I landed. And I've just never thought that it was intellectually honest to go, I don't see the evidence, but I'm just going to go ahead and believe without having that sufficient proof. To me, the most intellectually honest thing to do with oneself is to say, I don't know, but according to the evidence I see, I don't believe, and I'm going to withhold my profession of belief until I have sufficient evidence to state this is my belief, and I think I have good reason to believe it. And so I withhold that belief, and I'm always open to evidence.
This is Sex in the Pews. He is David Smalley. He's a stand-up comedian and actor in L.A. and the host of the very popular Dogma Debate, and you can see and hear very much why he's good at what he does. This is Glenn Klein along with Owen Pratt.
So, what were the questions that you found that Christianity was unable to answer that left you the most undecided or uncommitted to or unbought in to Christianity?
The more simple ones were, if God loves us, and which is stated multiple times throughout the Bible. I believe it's Psalm 121:7. God loves you and will keep you from all harm. Basic little promises like that, like we have this guy.
That's not a little promise, by the way. That's a big promise. That's a big motherfucking promise right there.
That we have this guy that's going to look over us, that created the universe, that is a personal God to me, that wants me to talk to him and have a relationship with me, but will let a child get leukemia and not solve the problem, and then go, hey, free will. That just doesn't cut it. It just doesn't cut it. I have a friend named JT Eberhard who blogs on What Would JT Do? And he came up with this idea, this basic thought experiment. He was like, think about the building that you're in right now, whether it's a house or an apartment building or a studio or whatever. You can kick that building. You can curse at the building. You can pee on the building. You can take a shit in the building. You can't jump over the building. But do you have free will? Sure. You would say you have free will. You could knock a hole in a wall, but you couldn't climb on the ceiling. So you have limited options, yet you consider yourself to have free will. So then that brings us to, if the existence of evil in the world is somehow evidence of free will, or free will is the excuse or apologetic reason why evil does exist, then we have to say, why didn't God just limit some of those options? Why not? Let's go with sprained ankles, sore throats, common cold, and maybe a stubbed toe. But let's go ahead and draw the line at leukemia in a 6-month-old baby. Right. Let's not have those insects that Stephen Fry so famously talked about that have an entire life cycle of burrowing itself into the face of a child, and its entire life cycle is focused on eating its way out through the child's eyeballs. How is this a creator's intelligent design? And if it's an asshole, then it makes sense. Fine, I'm going to back off that argument. But when you tell me that not only does that thing love me, but it is the very source and foundation of my morality, I say you're talking out of your ass. It makes no sense to say that this thing loves me, gave me morality, and also said, here are some bugs that might eat the eyeballs out of your child if she doesn't die of leukemia first. Have fun with this, guys. Pray hard. Know that I love you. Doesn't make any sense. Those are just some very basic, simple explanations. And then I started to see apologists get very dishonest. And if someone is holding on to the truth, they don't need to be dishonest. My mom always told me, if you're honest, you don't have to have a good memory. And I've always loved that. Now that's why I've always been genuine with people, even when they didn't like it. Apologists saying things like the fine-tuning argument, for example. Oh, if the earth moves 1 inch left or right, the heat would be too much or too abundant. We would freeze to death because this entire solar system is so perfect. It's absolute horseshit. The Earth varies in its orbit up to 500,000 miles away from the sun or toward the sun. It's just bullshit. And so watching them become more and more dishonest and lie about secular arguments and lie about atheist positions led me to believe they were afraid of something. And so that was another notch, and then the creation story. I mean, people believe the story in Genesis line by line. First he did this, first he did that. Listen, there are 3 mornings and 3 evenings before there is ever a sun created. How did we know the difference between morning and evening or daylight and nighttime when there was no sun, there was no moon? It doesn't make any sense. And they go, oh, God was the light. And they come back with some sort of poetic answer. Well, here's the truth behind that. Genesis is written as poetry. It's written as a play-by-play. It's just this idea, like if you were in love with a woman and you were to say, on day 1 you lit up my life, and on day 2 I brought the stars to you, and on day 3 you kissed me and I felt you in my toes, and it's this very romantic sort of, on the first day of Christmas my true love gave to me type thing. That's what Genesis is. But people who hold on and go, day 1, day 2, day 3, God created the earth in 6 days, and by the way, if you work on the 7th, we're gonna murder you. Exodus 35:2, by the way. We're going to kill you if you don't hold that 7th day. All of this text was so archaic and chaotic and barbaric. I was like, it very much reads as though uneducated fishermen from 3,000 to 4,000 years ago were writing this stuff, never knowing it was all going to be one book. We have a 1,600-year period with 43 different authors in 3 different languages, and that's why it is a chaotic, absolute mess. So people on top of that call it the good book. I go, yeah, good for creating atheists.
He is David Smalley, apparently an atheist at this juncture. David, do you know that there's no God, or do you believe there's no God?
Neither. I don't have a belief that there is a God, but I'm open to evidence.
So you're not an atheist.
I am an atheist.
An atheist knows there's no God.
You're wrong about that.
You're an agnostic.
You're wrong.
You don't know.
Atheist is lacking atheism. I lack a belief in atheism. I do not ascribe to any specific theology.
What do you say to some of the great thinkers over the history of the planet that saw value in the scriptures or the Bible, had a high level of opinion of the stories, like, I don't know, guys like Einstein, Abraham Lincoln, to name a few. Or I don't know if you ascribe any kind of genius or credibility to Jesus, who, by the way, his name wasn't Jesus. Christianity fucked it up right from the get-go. His name was actually Joshua. They went Jesus of Zeus, as they were trying to co-opt what was happening into their pagan Greek Roman beliefs at the time. Constantine did that. What would you say to the great thinkers of time that ascribed a certain level of credibility to all that?
There's still value in the Bible. There's value in the Bible. There's value in Peter Pan. There's value in Harry Potter. We can watch fiction and learn real life lessons from it. There are Bible stories that are correct about the date and time, correct about a certain body of water or a body of land, that then also come with a beautiful parable about how to treat one another or respect yourself. I would not say that everything in the Bible is bad. And in fact, some of my biggest arguments with other atheists is when they make broad brush comments like that. Everything in the Bible is horrific. You're wrong about that. There are several good things in the Bible, but being able to discern a life lesson from a book of fiction is different from taking every word of that entire book and living that as the gospel. And then on top of that, treating other people around you like shit because of this book.
Yeah, but that didn't answer the question. The question was for the great thinkers of the history of planet Earth who ascribed the Bible or the Torah, the Gospels, not to fiction, not to Harry Potter, not to Peter Pan. If you were able to speak to them in 2019, what would you say to these brilliant men and women?
Oh, that's a different question, Glenn.
I think it was pretty similar.
You told me I didn't answer the question, then you asked a different one. Which
no,
one
I think it was actually very accurate. Yeah, what would you say to them? How would you answer them? That's fine. It's fine to get what I was trying to say is it's fine to get good, meaningful life lessons out of a book, whether it's true or not. I wouldn't hold anything against them for holding the Bible in high regard for certain aspects. Here's what I would say to them if I was advising you from your perspective. Okay, and I could say this from my perspective too, that as smart as you guys were in your day, you didn't know it all, and you missed it in this regard. That, as Harry Truman thought when Israel was reconstituted in 1948, the U.S. being the first country to recognize Israel, when he let off the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, he thought that was the beginning of the end. This was like what the end times was going to be. I would say, Harry, you were wrong. And here's why you were wrong. Because you misunderstood the teachings in your Baptist church. Reagan thought the same thing. George W. Bush thought the same thing. Osama bin Laden thought he was bringing on the end times. And I would show them why their understanding of this amazing ancient text was misunderstood, misinterpreted, mistranslated, taken out of context, and it was a completely messed up. I mean, Abraham Lincoln was a messianic figure. I mean, he thought he was doing the will of God, and he wasn't. And I would show him in the scriptures and in the context of primarily the writings of Paul. The other guys, the other apostles in the New Testament, they had no clue at all. They were fishermen, they were tax collectors, they were publicans. Paul was the only, Saul, by the way, the guy's name was Saul of Tarsus, nice Jewish boy. He was the only one that understood what the scriptures were about. He's the one, David, that said the law, not the 10 commandments. There were 613 laws that were given to Israel. He didn't say the law was a blueprint for living. He didn't say follow this and you'll have a nice moral life. He said that the law was given to Israel to actually add power to the temptation, to guarantee that Israel would fuck up. And they fucked up big time as a forever example to humanity as what happens when you try to earn your way with God. And so now we're living in 2019. We think, well, God damn, this has taken a long time. But in the overall scheme of things, I think the planet's going to go on for a long, long time till the sun burns out. I mean, whatever billions of years from now. That's my personal thought on that. These 2,000 years are like nothing. Dave, do you remember that dream? We were talking about dreams. Do you remember that dream you had when you were 12 years old on August 17th?
I don't know that I had one.
No, you don't. I mean, you don't know, right? Exactly. You don't remember. If you did remember, you would have remembered at that moment. But it's nothing compared to your life. What we're living now, what's been happening for the last 10,000 years, is overall is going to be nothing in the scope of forever. And yet there is this magnificent, I think, creation, magnificent planet, magnificent ongoing give and take and ebb and flow between these human beings, and things are actually getting better. Not without hassle, not without challenge, not without trials and tribulation and tragedy. But for example, we are actually killing each other via warfare at less of a rate per capita than at any time in the history, in recorded history. How is that possible, given the fact we can kill each other so easily? The crime rate in this country, unlike what the media will report, is way down compared to what it was when I was a kid. I'm going to be 60 years old this year. Things are getting better, but because the 24/7 news cycle, because of the fucking internet and Facebook and every other thing that just puts all this negative bullshit in our face 24/7, the media's slogan, of course, is if it bleeds, it leads. The media could be reporting all the time on all the positive shit that's going on, all the good things people are doing, but they don't, because human beings naturally are drawn to the negative. It's the easiest thing in the world to do, to be focused on the negative of life. When people get together at the end of the day or when they talk on the phone, they don't talk about the wonderful things that happened. They talk about the challenges and the hassles. You've got to be positive on purpose, with a purpose. And so I think that I would say to the geniuses, the Galileos, the groundbreaking people that were Martin Luther King Jr., for God's sake.
Galileo was killed by the church.
Yeah. Martin Luther King Jr. absolutely believed he was on a mission from God. I would say, guys, you got it wrong. Love you. You're perfect and righteous just like everybody else, but you missed it. Now, am I missing it? Yes. But I have a greater understanding than these guys do, not because of me, but just because I'm this far down the road. Do you know how many times I was only in religion for about 10, 12 years. Do you know how many times that when I was eventually an ordained minister, you experienced this too, David, about people projecting that this was going to be the end times, this was going to be the rapture, this was going to be the end of the world?
Oh, yeah. My mom had, when I was reading that Bible, started as a teenager, my mom had newspaper clippings from 1980 of a guy saying that the world was going to end in 89. And then someone else said that Clinton was the Antichrist. Right, and then it was Hillary Clinton. Right. And then it was Barack Obama. And they would give like formulas for how to determine his age minus the number of letters in his name. And it just got so, like, my mom used to sit me down and warn me, like, you know, the first person's going to be able to he's going to appear to come back from the dead and all this other stuff. So whenever, I forget which president, Reagan, they got shot and then didn't die, everybody's like, oh, maybe he's the first coming of the Antichrist. And this is going to be the end times. And that's just when I was a kid.
Do you remember? Remember Mikhail Gorbachev? He was the last Soviet Union leader. And he had a big birthmark on his forehead, and they pull out a passage in the Bible about a mark on the forehead. I mean, dude, Let me tell you something. I have, kicked myself about the time I wasted and the money I wasted and all the things that I did when I was in Christianity. But I'm so thankful for it, because as a commentator and a talk show host, I can talk intelligently about what's actually in there. Most talk show hosts, not you, obviously, but most talk show hosts can't talk It's a huge and remains, it always has been, a huge issue in our society, but most men and women can't talk intelligently about it because they never studied it. But the one thing that I absolutely absolve myself and I find a level of peace about is that a lot smarter people than I have gotten sucked into that bullshit. That I can tell you.
Well, all right then.
It's funny because you may or may not have come across anyone that may be in the place that we're in as far as our theisms, but because just it sounds like one of your big issues with the idea of a God or a creator is the lack of evidence, the idea that if he is loving and if he is omnipowerful, all powerful, that we wouldn't live in the world that we are. So either he's not all powerful or he's not all loving, and it can't be both. But and that totally checks out logically for me. And it's funny because where we differ in our understanding compared to a lot of Christians is with what we refer to as the finished work of the cross, and that the resurrection and the crucifixion was the last involvement, if you will, that God, the creator of the universe, the orchestrator of our existence, had in the physical world that we live in. And so now it's just a reality of oneness with him internally and on a spiritual level with God, and perfect righteous and holiness with Jesus
for everyone,
regardless of belief. And now it's just our free will within our ability, like you laid out so beautifully before, to carve ourselves the own life, the only, the life that we want to live.
David, what we say is that if you're not going to think that God's done and finished this work, the last thing that Christ said on the cross was, "It is finished." And what we think is that what he was talking about was that the old way of doing things, like actually intervening in human affairs, for one people destroying other people, I think that God was the original one that figured out to do things the same way and expect different results. It's insanity. So he's like, I'm done with this. I'm done trying to get people to behave a certain way in order to follow me and to worship me. And instead, I'm going to check out, and I'm going to declare a peace treaty, if you will, between myself and my people, the whole planet. And I'm going to insert myself inside every human being. That's the concept of the temple of the Spirit. And from here on out, that effect of God within will affect people to a different degree, but it's not going to gauge whether they are righteous, whether they're going to heaven, whether they're going to... There is no hell, by the way. There's no hell in the fucking Bible. Not one time does the word HELL translate into a place that God sends people for everlasting punishment. It's a tradition. It's a Catholic thing that started. It transferred into Protestantism, and it's really fucked a lot of people up. It's caused massive, multiple hundreds of millions of deaths, suicides. It is a heinous concept, and it's wrong. It's not in there.
What I find so interesting is I don't think I've ever heard anyone use fuck and HELL in the same sentence. So that's fascinating.
Welcome to Sex in the Pews.
That's what we do. Yeah. You know, David, that God was the original motherfucker of God. You know that, right?
Absolutely, had to be. Yeah. Otherwise, none of us would be here.
Yes, that's right. And then he didn't ask Mary for permission, by the way.
Also, the first rapist.
See that people are like, "Oh my God, you guys are sacrilegious." No, we're not religious at all. I mean, we're definitely sacrilegious. That's for sure. But we're not Christians. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, let me address that, man, because you said that Jesus' last words on the cross were, "It is finished."
Right.
Well, that's if you read John. In Luke, it says, "Father, into thy hands I commit my spirit." And then in Matthew, he says he ends it with, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" And then died. And then Mark doesn't even have Jesus saying anything. And in fact, in Mark, he ends it like this fictional story with a cliffhanger. Like these two women show up and the tomb's empty. Dun, dun, dun. And that's where it ends.
Right.
And, Matthew came along, read Mark, and then embellished upon it. And I think 66% of Matthew is word for word taken from Mark. and Matthew had access to Mark. And when they do the carbon dating, they see that Mark was written before Matthew. So to me, this looks like fiction upon fiction upon fiction and embellishment upon stories. So I don't know that it's fair to use "it is finished" as some philosophical basis, because we don't even know if he said that. We know that somebody wrote down that, and there are 3 other versions of that story where he didn't say anything.
Right. But have you
words.
ever heard Christians or ministers say that there's no conflict in the Bible, that it's all consistent?
yeah, quite often.
100% wrong. Now, the truth of the matter is, in the New Testament writings, that Christianity equates to the ancient Jewish text as Holy Writ, as Scripture. There's massive conflict. You just brought up every one of them in the Gospels, or not every one, but regarding that moment at the cross in Golgotha. Paul was at war with James and John and Peter. They hated each other.
Yeah, at first, for sure.
No, at the end, at first, Paul tried to get along out of political correctness.
Well, he was killing Christians, man.
That was after Paul had his experience when he was Saul. He was killing Christians, but they were at war. The only one that understood what we're talking about as far as a completed, finished, done, all bows tied, nothing to do anymore, no faith needed, no belief needed, no prayer will be answered. The only one that understood that was Paul. But the Jewish scriptures, the predictions, the prophecies, Christ himself said, you think you've got redemption because you know the scriptures. He says, I'm telling you, those were about me. And if you read those scriptures in the light of whether they actually happened or not, when you think about it as a allegory or a foreshadowing, a prediction, a prophecy of what was going to be coming in the future, it is phenomenal. There are thousands of predictions about what the life of this guy, not Jesus, Joshua, Yeshua, a Jewish dude, a Palestinian, if you will, would be doing, what is the way the people would respond, what would happen after the case. And the fact of the matter is, the Jews, my ancient people, were looking for a military leader, a general, if you will. That's the same goddamn thing the Christians are doing right now. They're waiting for the defeat of evil, and evil has been defeated. The manifestation of it is taking a long fucking time. It's stretched out, as far as we're concerned, in our understanding, but it is happening. It's just in recent history, we have the end of slavery as an accepted way of interacting with other human beings. Obviously and heinously, there's still slavery in the world, including in Tampa, Florida, and in Los Angeles, California. It's called human trafficking, sex slavery. That's one of the reasons we give a portion of all the proceeds that come to Sex in the Pews to fight human sex trafficking, because it's an awful thing. But the world in general, Western culture, says that slavery is no good anymore. It used to be you could be a Christian man and be a slave owner. Thomas Jefferson was a slave owner. George Washington was a slave owner. And
New and Old Testament, the New and Old Testament both condone slavery.
Yes, but Paul's
even in Ephesians it says slaves obey your earthly master.
But see, that's taken out of context. You can't do what the Christians do. They take one scripture, one passage, one verse out of context to make a point. Paul said there's no free or bond, there's no male or female, there's no Jew or Gentile. Everybody's the fucking same in Christ. Everybody's righteous, everybody's perfect. He elevated females to equality with males over 2,000 years ago. That's
who?
Paul the Apostle.
He did.
Yes, he did. Now he said women stay quiet in church. That had nothing.
No, sir. He did not just say stay quiet in the church. He said it is. So he wrote 1 Timothy and he wrote Corinthians, right?
Yeah.
So he said it is shameful for women to speak in church, and if a woman has a question, she should go home and ask her husbands in private.
Bro, that has nothing to do with the gospel. It has nothing to do with the concept of what we're talking about. It's taken out of context. It has. See, you're doing, and God bless.
And there's a lot of debate about those even being having been added on to after the fact. But
regardless, it's got nothing to do with this concept of unity, of human oneness, of righteousness. I mean, fucking Paul had Timothy circumcised after the fact. I mean, that was fucked up. Could you and then Paul corrected himself and said, circumcision, no big deal. Could you imagine? Timothy said, all right, Paul, I got you. I'll be circumcised as an adult. And then however many years later, it was like, Paul, circumcision, this is no big deal. Oh, my God.
It was probably his turn. Like, do we really need to take this shit that seriously?
Yeah, I know, right? We're talking with David Smalley. He's a stand-up comedian. He's an actor in L.A. He's hosted the widely popular Dogma Debate for more than 7 years. Former Christian, current atheist. We say it's better to be an atheist than be a Christian by far, or have any religious belief. To think that God is intervening any way in human affairs today is heinous, dangerous, and an insult to God. If God was still doing shit and we got what we've got, I mean, that is really an insult to the Creator. He decided to chill. He decided to take like a forever Sabbath. And now it's our turn to do what? Whatever you want. You want to do a dogma debate? You want to be a comic? You want to do a show on sex and religion? You want to be a civil rights leader? You want to be a frickin' hockey player? Do you do
when are we going to get to the sex part?
I was doing a reset. So you're 40 years old. You were a serious.
Not 40, God damn it! I'm not 40.
All right, my bad. You know you can still have sex after you're 40, right?
I don't know yet. I haven't crossed through that curtain.
How did your religious upbringing affect your view of sexuality and your personal experience?
Like everybody, comes with a lot of guilt. You think, from an early age, you're told that if you look at a woman in an attractive way or find her attractive or have thoughts, you're supposed to gouge your own eye out and throw it down. And I thought, well, that's the first scripture I'm going to say fuck off to. Not digging my own eyeball out. There's a lot of hot women out here. And I'm like 12 going, I'm not. And a lot of times what the Bible is doing is fighting against basic human instincts.
Exactly.
To create and fighting it with cultural guilt.
It's not the Bible, though. It's the people interpreting the Bible. Jesus said, if you've committed adultery in your heart, you've committed adultery. Either he was saying, I'm up in the ante. You think you're okay because you haven't put tab A into slot B with somebody that you're not married to. I'm telling you, if you even think about it. Or he was saying, quit it. There's no way that because you haven't fucked another woman that you're not married to, that somehow you're better off. He said, if your right hand offends you, cut it off. Either he was saying, stop it, or he was literally saying, you can't have it both ways, Christians. You can't say, we used to have, back in the day, we used to have seminars about how not to think about sex. If Jesus was actually saying you can't have lust in your heart or you can't think about that, he was literally saying, I'm telling you to stop behaving in the way I created you. That's fucked up. Are you free of that guilt now, Dave?
Oh, yeah.
Amen.
It's gone, man.
Yeah, you must get some hotties coming up to you after a comedy show. I mean, you're on stage, you're making everybody laugh. We know that women find humor an incredibly attractive attribute of men. I mean, how well do you do?
Oh, I would never objectify women in such a manner, Glenn. Let me say, yes, I am quite often approached by beautiful people of multiple genders, and I enjoy myself. Is that going to be okay?
Are you non-discriminatory between your genders?
I do absolutely discriminate.
Just check it.
Hell yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with it.
No, yeah. It's a fun life, man. And yeah, I think being an actor as well, I'm often on, either set or doing a play with people who are just absolutely gorgeous. And yeah, I mean, it's fun to be open and have human connections with people who you find beautiful and fun to be around without guilt. That's really it. And me, if I am in committed relationship with a woman, and another woman approaches me and talks to me, I don't address that. I speak with them. I have a platonic relationship. That's where that guilt would come in, is if I started thinking, hey, maybe we could hook up, but I'm in a relationship. So I just avoid that and I don't do it, because at the end of the day, I'm the one I've got to go to bed with. You know what I mean? So
yeah, but why would that be a problem though?
Well, because I've made a promise to an individual to not do that, and I wouldn't be okay with myself going to bed at night knowing I've broken a promise to someone I care about.
Well,
so that, in that respect, you know, it keeps me keeping promises to people I care about. If I'm not in a committed relationship, yeah, I'm not going to have any guilt towards a God I don't believe in. So yeah, it's pretty freeing. Now, the Christians will start pissing me off when they say that that's why I reject God, so I can have guiltless sex. It makes no sense. That's like me saying I reject police so I can just murder people at will. It just doesn't work that way.
I like that one.
You can't just will something out of existence so that you can do what you want to do. It doesn't make any sense. So being accused of intentionally not believing so that I can sin is probably one of the more ridiculous arguments. But yeah, once the belief went away and the duress went away that there was some shale gun against my head for a lake of fire that I no longer feared, and I took control over my own life and said, look, I'm responsible for my screw-ups, not Satan, and I get the credit for my successes, not God, then I have the responsibility to fix this, and now I have the power to take over and leave a lasting, loving legacy in this world. And that's my afterlife. I'm going to live on in your memories and the memories of my listeners and the recordings and my writings. So for me, leaving that legacy is my afterlife, and I want that to be as positive for as many people as possible. So there's no reason for me to hold guilt toward anyone that is metaphysical.
So when you have when you're in a committed relationship, is it also typically an exclusive arrangement?
Yes, typically.
And why do you do it that way?
I don't know. I think it's probably mostly cultural expectation that the majority of us were raised in. I think open relationships can work if it's the right people and the right arrangement and the right negotiation and agreement. Some people, I think, tend to be more monogamous and some people tend to be more poly. And I think if you find the right people that are willing to be in open relationships, go for it. But if you make a promise to another monogamous individual, you should keep that promise for your own integrity and ethics.
But that gets back to what Paul said. He said that kind of promise, or we could call that a law, not that God is judging it, because that's all done with, but that kind of promise actually sets you up for worse problems. The added temptation, if you're a healthy heterosexual or homosexual person, doesn't make a difference. If you're healthy sexually, you're going to actually at least think about having sex with someone else other than the one that you've promised that you won't have sex with anybody else to. The cultural monogamous setup absolutely stems from religion. And so even a Christian or even an atheist would call somebody who goes outside the bounds of that a cheater. And I maintain that I'm monogamous by nature. I'm a serial monogamist. But I understand that in my relationships, it's unhealthy for me to demand that my wife or my girlfriend only has sex with me. It's counterproductive, and vice versa. And I've been in open relationships, and I can tell you, and I've been in closed relationships, and I can tell you without a doubt, at least in my experience, when I've had the freedom to do what I want to do, the temptation is way less. Because half the fun's the naughtiness, the cheating, the getting away with it. So beautiful humans, if you want your significant other to not be with other people, tell them they can. Do whatever you want to do.
Well, I think that's different for everybody.
Of course, but
I wouldn't say that monogamy only comes from religion. I think that's been a major push culturally and guilt-wise to control people. But I don't think it's solely from that.
What else is it from?
From I think it's from evolution as well. There are multiple mammalian species that mate for life and consider building a life together, building a home together, raising children together to be important and special. And if that mammal goes off and has sex with someone else, there are fights that happen, and they have no concept of Baptist or Episcopalian. They just go, hey, we were building something together and now you're having sex with this other thing. And they'll either fight that one or attack the one that quote unquote cheated. I mean, beavers and angelfish and swan and penguins and albatross and blue whales. There are tons of different species who mate for life. So I think that there's a foundation of monogamy through our evolutionary ancestors. But should we rise above our evolutionary ancestors? I don't know that it's above. It's not above, Glenn. It's about adaptation. So that's why I'm saying. I absolutely think that people should do what they want to do. Either way, I think it is ineffective to lock somebody in to say, once I'm in love and I'm committed to you, that if I have sex with another human being the rest of my life, it's a deal killer. Furthermore, what if this was such a wonderful idea, why would such a huge percentage of people that go into a monogamous, committed, exclusive relationship cheat? Well, what I'm getting at, Glenn, is I think you're painting with a broad brush. You're telling your listeners into a microphone, you're saying, if you want your partner to not want to cheat, allow them to be with other people. And what I'm saying is... then it's not cheating. What I'm saying is that it might work for some, but you and your partner talk about it and decide what works for both of you. Because if two people are serial monogamous by nature, they may find that being monogamous grows their bond even more. And so not sharing certain aspects of yourself with other individuals makes your relationship even that much more special. Some people may not put that much value on sex and say, what I find most connected with you is our mind and our hearts and our lives. But yeah, if you have a sex thing on the side, it's not going to bother me. It's just like masturbation. Do whatever you want. Be safe about it. But you and I will have this relationship in this family. I'm telling your listeners, do what you and your partner agree on and move forward. I don't think there's one easy fix. I think it depends on the individual. No, I agree with you. We believe in freedom of choice. And we believe that people should do what they want. But they should do it in an educated, informed manner. And the fact of the matter is, statistically, monogamy in 2019 don't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because it doesn't take human nature. It doesn't take current events, which is the women's rights movement. It changed everything, thank God. Sure, but Glenn, there are other avenues besides it's not just either open the relationship or be monogamous. There are other ways to sexually heighten the relationship. There are, but David, all right, let's say you and I are buddies, okay? Let's say you and I are friends. And I'm in the middle of a point. Can I finish this? Yes, sir. For example, you and your partner could watch porn together and perhaps tap into some of those instincts of enjoying the sexuality of another person. You and your partner could invite a third person in and have a third person have sex with both of you at the same time. You could set up all kinds of different things where another person is, say, on a computer or on Skype or phone sex or whatever, and your partner could be involved in some way. It doesn't have to be either full-on monogamy or go have sex with whoever you want. That's why I'm saying talk to your partners about understanding these human instincts, which I get what you're saying, but also within the realm of respecting your partner as another human being, and it's not just black and white one way or the other. Are you suggesting that we're suggesting or that I'm suggesting not to respect your partner? I'm saying you're saying one way or the other. You're like, open your relationship and then they won't want to cheat on you. And I just think that's not what I said. I said they would be less likely to cheat. I mean, the fact that we're calling it cheating is absurd. Right, but they could also be less likely to cheat if you share in their sexual fantasies and enjoy whatever they enjoy. Like, so let's say your wife loves pornography and loves a certain type of certain type of porn. I don't know. Say it's BDSM and you're not into that. Rather than you being like, well, you be with me and don't do that or we're getting divorced. Or, okay, fine, do whatever you want at the BDSM dungeon. I don't want to know about it. Those aren't the only two options. You could explore things with her and go outside your comfort zone and learn about it and go with her or watch things with her, and she could bring you into that world. You guys could grow together in your partnership rather than just saying either this or that.
Well,
that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, but I think that you're mischaracterizing what I'm saying. I agree with what you're saying. But I know that freedom, as messy as it is always better than authoritarian perspectives and governments and regimes. And even though dictatorships and very clear outlined authority and definitions of morality are cleaner, it doesn't answer to the human heart, which craves for freedom and expression. What if you're married to a partner who you love and they don't want to watch porn? They don't want to have oral sex. They don't want to have anal sex. They don't want to have sex at all, for Christ's sake. Then what are you going to do?
Again, talk with your partner and work through it. I don't know.
I know people. I had a hairstylist one time who was cutting my hair, and she told me that she caught her husband watching porn and jerking off, and she divorced him over it because she said, shouldn't I be enough? You ever hear that one? Aren't I enough? And of course, she had a sharp implement by my throat and I had this was years ago, but I had this absolute opinion that freedom is better than dictatorship or authoritarianism in every way. And even though authoritarianism is much more efficient by far, but I didn't say anything until she got done cutting my hair. But she divorced her husband for watching porn and jerking off. To her, that was cheating. I think that, yes, of course you should talk to your partner. Of course you should be open right from the get-go. But beautiful humans, I always suggest err on the side of freedom. If David and I are buddies forever, and he calls me one night and he tells me he just had an amazing sexual experience the night before, and he tells me about it, I was like, dude, that's awesome. You know, wow, that was a really fun thing that I just heard you tell me. You can't tell your significant other that unless you have an open relationship and they're happy for you, like I would be as your good buddy.
Yeah, I understand that because that would be something that you and I wouldn't share as something special in our relationship. Because you and I aren't having sex, we don't share that part of ourselves with one another. So you have no skin in the game, quite literally.
Right, but that's one of the reasons we do the show. We want to demystify humanity's relationship with God and with sex. The relationship with God is amazing. It's beautiful. It's awesome. It's wholeness. It's oneness. So is sex. So can sex be? But it's not this freaking sacred. You're giving your body to another person. It's sex. It's gonna be an amazing part, and it should be an amazing part of the human experience, but so is friendship. And so is parenting that doesn't involve sex directly. Obviously, it starts with sex. Even Owen knows that. Did you learn that in sex ed?
I learned it somewhere down the line.
Yeah. So, this is a phenomenal conversation. And I just think that religion and government make good people liars, David. They put restrictions and rules that we don't need. People that would never lie in certain situations lie on their taxes because the government makes us do it. Pretty much. Religion the same way. If you want to be a good Christian, you've got to be a good liar. You have to be. Because you walk into these churches and everything is wonderful on a Sunday morning and you're praising the Lord and you just had a massive fight with your spouse on the way into the church. But everything's fine. The pastor's anointed. The sermon is powerful. Freedom. It's kind of like Mel Gibson at the end of Braveheart. Remember freedom?
Yeah, I've said for a long time, when people start asking me the meaning of life, this supposedly unanswerable question, I answer with one word, and it's freedom. Think about the worst things that a human can experience. Prison, being held captive,
Yes.
slavery, or some sort of terminal illness.
Marriage.
That locks you into a hospital bed or hospice. Those are the worst things humans experience. Being kidnapped, abused, beaten. Everything, all of the one thing that all of those have in common is a lack of freedom. Now think about all the wonderful things in our lives. Vacations, holidays, right? Paid time off. Being rich, free to move about the country, free to move about the world, travel, free to get up at 11:30 a.m. on a Tuesday and do whatever the hell you want because you don't have to go to work anymore. That's what we are here for, is freedom. Mm-hmm. So I am on board with what you're saying. I get it. I just think that there are multiple layers here. Even if there was no religion, I think that if I am with my partner and then I go, hey, I'm not going to see you tonight. I want to go have sex with this other woman. Even if she goes, well, I understand biologically the desire to be with multiple people, and so I'm not really going to object to that. What if she's lonely that night and feeling sad or left alone or insignificant or not pretty or not sexy or unwanted, self-conscious? That could be hurtful to someone, even if religion had never existed.
Totally agree with that. And that's the difference between being an asshole and being a dick. A dick... See, in our society, we interchangeably use the terms, that guy's a dick, that guy's an asshole. It basically means the same thing, right? But dicks and assholes aren't the same thing. Assholes emit noxious fumes and shit. Basically, a dick's purpose, when it's working properly, does two things. It brings life and pleasure when it's firm and hard and erect and penetrating and well-positioned. A dick would never leave his woman in the condition that you just described. A dick would take his woman into consideration and her feelings. And it would not... See, if you and I are friends and we have an arrangement to go to a ball game together, if you blow me off, that's not cool. Now, things happen. But any relationship demands give and take and consideration and giving and charity and graciousness. That's true in a romantic relationship. That's true in friendship. That's true in business. And so, of course, you wouldn't want to be with somebody that would do something like that to a significant other. On the other hand, if she had a night out with the girls and you were free, go at it. My folks have been together for 67 years. They live not too far from where you are right now in Calabasas. And I always wondered how the hell they made it. I thought that was normal when I was growing up. That's all I knew. And my mom was playing mahjong with her senior Jewish friends in beautiful Calabasas, California. And I don't know how the discussion came up. I couldn't believe when I heard this story. And my mom said, whose name is Eileen, my dad's name is Bob. Eileen said to her friends, if Bob goes and gets a massage and gets a happy ending after the massage, how does that hurt me? And I was like, wow, there it is. Openness, freedom. Now, I don't think that they were open, more than that. I don't know. I never really talked to them about it. But her friends were like, Eileen, are you nuts? She goes, really, how does that hurt me? So, David, if your girl is out with the girls that night and you go ahead and have a drink and meet a nice woman and, just nature takes its course, you have an incredible hour and a half, how does that hurt your girl?
Well, it could hurt her in a few different ways. For one, it increases the possibility of diseases and infections.
That's true.
For two, it could make her feel like you alluded to earlier, like she's not enough or she doesn't do something. What is that other woman doing that I don't do for you?
Maybe you could teach her.
I understand, but then she's in a subservient position of learning rather than being in a partnership.
And so could you be.
She
if
could
she's
feel
out
that
doing
way.
stuff.
Awesome.
He is the host of Dogma Debate. He's been doing it, the podcast, for over 7 years. The widely popular Dogma Debate. He's David Smalley. He's a stand-up comedian and actor in L.A. And David, cannot thank you enough for the time. And it was great. Hope to do it again sometime.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for your time.
There he is, David Smalley. There he goes. And yeah, that was good. A little different viewpoint.
Different. One thing I did want to point out, though, was that I think the point that David was trying to make was that obviously it comes down to everyone's own personal experience and their comfort level and what they're able to cope with within a relationship. And we had touched on this idea, but to paint the picture a little better of how I've heard to it referred to as a spectrum of monogamy or polygamy, where how you were articulating that monogamous means you can't watch porn because you're cheating on me if you do and I'm going to divorce you, compared to, okay, maybe we can explore something like David was talking about with a Skype or a phone call or a third person situation, all the way on the far end where people may be more into experiencing, watching and seeing what, seeing their partner be able to experience all of the fullness and freedom that is available and afforded to them as having a human body. So that's was the last of my point that I wanted to make.
He's Owen Pratt. This is Glenn Klein. Thanks for joining us. Go to sexandthepews.com. And for all the information past the podcast, the dick pic of the week, please subscribe on all the different platforms. Oh, thank you very much for spinning the dials.
Shalom, everybody. Bitches.